Okay, we're live on the Real News Network in downtown Philadelphia, and this is Paul J. And I'm in the car with Danny Glover, activist and actor. And this is Danny. Are we seeing Danny? Yeah. So we are on our way to the Media Pavilion at the Wells Fargo Center, where the Democratic Convention is taking place. There's going to be a press conference there dealing with Nina Turner, who's going to speak, Susan Sarandon, Danny Glover, and others. Nina's going to explain what happened to her at the Democratic National Convention. She, as far as we know right now, as best we know, Nina was supposed to nominate Bernie Sanders, and at the last minute was told Bernie Sanders actually had to say that she couldn't, and we're going to get the whole story when we get to the press conference. And what the press conference is about is sort of in support of Nina Turner. Nina Turner, of course, was a surrogate, is an actor, but also was campaigning for Bernie Sanders throughout the whole primary campaign as a former senator from Ohio. And some people are even talking about her as a possible presidential nominee or candidate in 2020. So, Danny, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Paul.
So I know you can't say much yet about Nina Turner. You're going to say more when we get to the press conference.
Yes.
But what's your overall impression of the convention so far? What's been happening with the Sanders movement and how the DNC's been responding to all this?
Well, first of all, the convention begins with a great deal of damage control. It starts there with the removal of Debbie Wasserman and all the other kind of machinations that were taking place to, in some ways, control this voice from the outside. And that voice from the outside was inside because of Bernie Sanders and his campaign. Activists were here. People were upset. People were wanting some answers. And as we see now with the WikiLeaks tapes and even with the findings of the primary results and election results in New York and California, we saw the irregularities in there. And so those are questions that people had already. And so there's certainly one of the most outspoken and most dynamic supporters of Bernie during the primaries was Nina Turner. And the sense is that there's an attempt to even quiet her. This has been a convention in which the Democratic Party has tried to keep the lid on whatever the reactions are to all the things, throwing up and thrusting to in our face the fact that it is the most progressive platform that the Democratic Party has ever had, you know. And we know that there were things that were in there that were no-brainers, the things that we needed to talk about, whether it's $15 an hour into the death penalty. Those were things that we certainly were, if we consider ourselves progressive, and if we consider ourselves the Democratic Party, I would say a People's Party, the things they would have to say in that. They had to, in some sense, create a sense of unity. That's the first thing. This was a very contentious primary. And certainly when people came out here frazzled, people came out of the primary very, very solid and staunch in their own support of their respective candidates. So that's the first thing that had to happen. And you see that in in various venues, et cetera, you know. All of a sudden you see Mayor de Blasio today talking about supporting unions, and saying that they're connected to the middle class. And we always defining everything by the middle class, not the working class. They use the middle class as their reference point, you know. But nobody talks about the working class, those people who have given up on work, and those people who are out of work, and those people who are homeless. And they're right here. They're all over this place. Yeah.
The Clinton camp seems to be more concerned with recruiting people like Bloomberg, advocating of the Washington Post, denouncing Trump, winning over Republicans, than in fact caring about the so-called unification of the party. Because when they do this, Wasserman Schultz, even though she was quote unquote removed as head of DNC, she was kind of given this big title in the Clinton campaign.
Yeah.
But more importantly, right up until the last second, she was going to do the opening gavel.
Absolutely.
And only at the very last second did they finally intervene and say this, there's going to be a chorus of boos, so we better not do it.
Yeah.
But it's kind of another expression. The Clinton camp doesn't seem to be all that concerned about unity or appeasing the Sanders camp.
Or even appeasing those who people are speaking on behalf of those people on the outside, the homeless people I see around here in Philadelphia itself, and all those who are in need of the Democratic Party, who relied on the Sanders campaign as a voice for them who were without a voice. So I think the point is that it's what Bernie's campaign has done, what the Sanders campaign has done, is expanded the body politics, expanded the involvement of young people, etc. For the Clintons, their idea of this whole thing and the Clinton campaign and everything else, their idea was get over it. You young people, get over it. We won, basically, and we're going to control this situation. And no matter what the compromises have, and Bernie Sanders has made a number of compromises, no matter what the compromises have been made, the fact is that still there is no consistency, or no, how would you say, no placing the framework of whatever the platform committee came up with none of these in the action right here. The action has to be one of opening up and creating the space for all these voices, and that is not happening on this floor. That is not happening in this convention.
So how did you feel when Bernie called for unanimous support for Clinton, that he did it himself?
Well, I'm sorry I didn't look at it. I didn't watch it, but I was torn by the fact that he did it. He didn't have to do it. And I'm always thinking about what are the forces that now say that he has to do this. He's taken many steps back. And, I was there in the audience when he told all those people who fought and who marched, who went from state to state with him, who traveled, who took their vacations and everything else. I was with them to campaign with him, organic grassroots campaign with him. And what about those people? Where are they now? Are they just thrown away or discarded at this particular point in time? And under some guise of a platform, of a progressive platform, and we know what a platform, whatever it looks like, the idea is that most of that is never acted upon.
Well, Bernie seems to be saying the danger of the Trump presidency is so strong or so great that you have to make this sort of temporary truce with Clinton and then fight it out with her afterwards. He's not saying it in so many words because he has to endorse her now, but what do you make of that logic?
I don't know if, obviously one thing is that the campaign, beyond just trying to convince Republicans who are on the fence or independents who are on the fence or whatever about whether it's Trump or her, whatever. I don't think that as always in American electoral politics, that they've expanded the base itself and brought more people to the table. And say to them, this is the battle that we are waging right at this moment. What is the plan? What is the organic plan? What is the imaginative plan that we have to win our objectives? To fight for our objectives, where it is. It's a great deal of talk right now, and that's where it is. But once you don't see it represented in some form within the convention, except those courageous people who walked out, and except those people who were convinced that there's another day to fight, where do you see it? Where do you see it in this system? You see this, political performance theater, and basically, the most honest people who have been here at this convention are those people who have been on the outside. Those people who demonstrated in front of City Hall on Monday. Those people those women who got together and said the voices of women at a small church here right on Broad Street. Those are the authentic voices out there. And those people who should have been right outside, homeless people, unemployed people, people who've been connected or who've been affected by the political, by the police violence and everything. Those people should be in the forefront.
So the Sanders campaign, if I understand the logic correctly, is Trump. The danger of a Trump presidency, with kind of neo-fascism, is so strong that the fight now is elect. They're saying at least 100 progressives, create a real progressive bloc and caucus and such, and strengthen the progressive wing of the party, and then fight it out. What do you make of the logic?
Well, I think the logic, the rationale. There's always a rationale for this. I don't know if the capacity or the will to fight it out, the capacity on the outside and the will to fight it on the outside will be there, but I'm not so sure the will to fight this on the inside. Those people who I know who want to go back to business as usual. If the climate, if the political culture is set in motion to have the fear-mongering and the representation of this to be the clear point of what is happening here, and this is what this is a campaign based upon fear, and essentially that's it. What Trump represents. So it is the ideal recipe for all the other things that I don't think we would want, at the end. And whether of course, we can talk as much as we can about the resources that were gathered within the campaign, within the primary to make this happen, and the people would have felt that we need something else, and I don't think we're getting it right now at this moment. Mm. Yeah.
What would you like to hear Bernie say at this moment that he's not?
Well, I don't know right now. This is what we've gone on in this whole primary is what Bernie has said. What we believe, he believes, and I have no reason to doubt he believes that. But at some point, in what has happened ever since the end of California, and really the end was California more than a month ago, I don't believe that the strength that was necessary, how we strengthen this movement, I don't believe those steps were taken in ways, and Paul, I don't know the answers to this. I know that we're going to have to trust, in a lot of ways, a lot of unknowns, a number of unknowns. I mean, we've had movements that were more evolved in political consciousness in the country's history than this nascent movement right here, the beginning of a movement that everybody talks about. You know what I'm saying? And certainly we know that the movement itself is going to be how we connect networks to networks, how we connect the environmental issues and global warming and climate change with real people's needs, and reforming, or not reforming, eliminating the policing as we know it, or whatever it is. And all these kind of questions, how do we get people back to work? Those are the kind of things that we have on our table in this sense. So the answers and the conflict and the contradictions with all the things we're fighting there and dealing with are there. How we present ourselves, and to what extent do we get the work done? Not in a moment. Not as an election is not. It was not a movement, but in the moment. What are the long-term issues? What are the long-term organizational strategies? What are the long-term ways in which we engage people, really engage people in this process? Or are we in a sense, do we in a sense carry people to a certain height emotionally and discharge them at a particular moment and then mediate or meander through something else? I don't know that, but that's up to us too. That's not up to Bernie. That's up to us as well.
The some of the nurses I've talked to, and the nurses union's been very important to the Sanders
I mean,
candidacy.
essential,
Yeah.
you know.
They seem to be saying, whether it's inside the Democratic Party or outside the Democratic Party or both, the focus should be on electing many, many, many progressives at various levels, and then you fight it out in 2018, you fight it out again in 2020, and that you keep this thing going.
Well, I mean, that's a strategy too. But do we have the infrastructure for that right at this particular moment? You know, can we identify, you know, a key on local levels, on regional levels, on state levels, and in the federal level? Can we identify key progressives who, in a sense, will be able to? I mean, it's really beautiful thinking. I'm saying it is. You know, I mean, it's beautiful thinking, but in the way in which I don't know this because we're in the new territory. You know, the issues may have been framed in such a way during the civil rights movement and other movements, in a way in which people can grasp that. And we watched that. We watched the issue of South Africa framed in it was that free South Africa, et cetera, and we saw what happened once South Africa freed itself. And you saw the raw and ugly way real politics manifests itself.
So you're meaning neoliberalism?
Neoliberalism in a sense. So the problem is that nobody's ever said that the issue, the crisis is not with us as people and our desire to want more and to change our lives in that. The crisis is with the system itself. The crisis with that, when we Bernie said it's broken, but the crisis with capitalism itself. And what is important, and I can think in one way, what a Trump victory does, in sense, with foreign policy, I don't know. I don't know how Hillary's foreign policy is going to be any different than Trump's foreign policy.
Well, if you look at some of the people around Trump, it seems to me it will be the same policy on steroids.
Yeah.
Meaning that if he's really going to crush ISIS, he's going to wind up having to carpet bomb or send in troops. He's got money from Sheldon Adelson. Seemed to have made his, with Pence as the vice president.
Yeah.
He's made his deal with the neocons. I know a lot of neocons are certainly supporting Hillary, and Kagan recently called Hillary a neocon, and said even if she doesn't like to call herself that. But one would think that it will be more like the Obama presidency than the Bush presidency. One would think.
Well, I mean, I would think it's always with the Obama presidency was about dealing with allow foreign policy to drift in the way of what essentially was going in the direction it was going on, more wars, et cetera, and allow us to rely on domestic policy. One of the things that's been talked about so often is when we talk about domestic policy, the issue, we're never connecting the issue of violence against our children and the violence against other children in the world. We're not never connected that. We're not allowed to connect that. We're not allowed to create a narrative that in a sense finds the connection between the two of those, you know, and find some sort of way in which there's some sort of way in which they are able to unite in that way. But I think you're right on that. I don't know what impact we have not on foreign policy, as well as the key things that have been strategic in Bernie's campaign. You know, breaking up the banks as one. You know, getting Wall Street, getting money out of politics and everything. I don't know how that just evaporates and goes away in 4 years at any particular point, any time soon. You know what I'm saying? I don't know how that. So it's going to affect how money is raised during those sessions or in between years of an election. It's going to affect that. Are people going to put together the same kind of energy on local and regional and national 2-year election 2 years from now, 2018, 2020? Are they going to put that kind of energy into it? You know? And
that's why I wonder about how Bernie positioned his support for Hillary. I understand the strategy of saying.
Well, how did he? And what is he? How is he? How do we find out?
Well,
How do
just
we
the way
know?
he said it, what he said publicly at the convention, when he says Hillary believes in universal health care, Hillary believes in that, the logic that's being given, he's kind of setting her up because we all kind of know she doesn't. And then when she doesn't do these things, well, he'll have her on the record as having nodded her head, yes, she believes in these things, but not follow up. But it seems to me one has to be careful about creating illusions about her at the same time. I mean, she's her in terms of foreign policy, she's essentially a war criminal.
Oh yeah.
What happened in Libya was a violation of international law.
Absolutely.
And
what happened in Honduras is also a violation.
Honduras and her role in Syria.
Yeah.
So it seems to me you have to say the whole truth about who she is, even if you come to the conclusion and from a strategic point of view that it's better to have a Clinton presidency than a Trump. It doesn't mean you don't tell the whole truth about who she is and what her record is.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm concerned. There's kind of illusions created about her. If you go too far, she believes this and she believes that, because we know she doesn't.
Well, in the spirit of unity, I can't figure out what's in the spirit of unity, and the spirit of building this coalition against Trump. It almost sounds going back to the Iraqi War, building a coalition against the evil empire. You know what I'm saying? And I don't know. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know how it now frames in all the ways in which, even though a progressive agenda or mandate, a progressive mandate that comes out of the platform committee, if indeed that is instituted, if indeed that we celebrate many small steps toward that, I just can't figure that out.
I mean, Clinton's greatest nightmare is going to be if the Democrats actually do control both houses, and then she actually has the possibility of implementing some of this platform. Because I'm sure they're hoping and counting on the fact that they won't, and then they can always blame the Republicans.
Exactly. I mean, one of the key issues is the TPP. What's going to happen with that? I heard the mayor of New York, de Blasio, say, down with the the TPP. Now what happens with that? I mean,
Sanders made a promise said at the delegates meeting that he and others, progressives in the Senate, are going to try to block a lame duck session passing of the TPP. I don't know if they have the power to do that or not.
Wow.
They might have to filibuster.
Yeah.
Even that can be stopped. So.
Yeah.
All right, so we're about to get to this press conference. Just to situate you, we're pulling into the parking lot at the Wells Fargo Center, and we'll be following Danny as he walks to the press conference. Just to remind you again, we're going to a press conference which is about Nina Turner. As far as we know, again, I'll repeat, Nina was supposed to be one of the people, along with Tulsi Gabbard, that nominated Bernie Sanders, and at the last minute, as far as we know, I can't verify the story, but what seems to be the story is the DNC, the Clinton camp, didn't want Nina Turner doing this. I guess partly because she's been very critical of the DNC, very, very critical of the Clinton camp. Mind you, so was Tulsi Gabbard. But I think some people are speculating, and here's my personal speculation, Nina Turner is a heck of a candidate in 2020 if there's going to be an attempt to make this the Clinton a one-term presidency, and maybe they didn't want Nina Turner to have such exposure. I don't know. It's a speculation. Yeah. But at any rate, apparently there's a lot of pressure put on Bernie Sanders, and to avoid a big fight, as far as we understand it, Bernie agreed. And now there's going to be a press conference organized by the National Nurses United, the Nurses Union. Susan Sarandon's going to be there. Danny's going to be speaking there.
Dawson Rosario.
Dawson's going to be there. And, of course, Nina Turner's going to be there to tell her story about what happened. We're just pulling up.